Welcome back, everyone, to the Beginner to Master Speedrun, episode number 38. Coming into today, rated 1548 on a win streak of 119 games. So try and keep it going. And before we get into the chess, I do want to give a big thanks to the sponsor of today's video, which is BetterHelp. Chess can be an emotional roller coaster. One moment, you're taking down a grandmaster with a sweet opening trap. Next moment, you've got tricked and you've spoiled a completely winning position. It's a fitting metaphor for life. Life is full of ups and downs, and it's not always easy to deal with the hard times all on your own. Whether you're having issues with stress, anxiety, relationships, or you're just feeling stalemated and you need someone to talk to, therapy can really help. Now, this is where our sponsor, BetterHelp, comes in. They're an online platform that connects you with a licensed therapist who's trained to listen and give helpful, unbiased advice. All you need to do is click the link in the video description, betterhelp.com/Eric Rosen, fill out a brief questionnaire, and BetterHelp will match you with a professional with years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or computer via phone call, video chat, or messaging. It's the easiest way to start talking to a therapist. Again, visit betterhelp.com/Eric Rosen to get a special discount off your first month of BetterHelp and join the over 4 million people who have used BetterHelp to live a happier and healthier life. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to the chess. Okay, first opponent playing 22N heart. I'll play e5. And we'll have a normal king's pawn. Knight c3, this is a 3 knights. I'll make it the 4 knights, why not? And there are a decent number of moves for white after the 4 knights. Bishop c4 walks into what is known as a center fork trick. I'm temporarily sacking a knight, but I have d5 to win back the piece. And this is known to be, at the very least, equal for black. Very often black can get a better position. Bishop d3 is the best move. And from here, of course, the most normal move is to take the knight. But there is a very fancy move to play here. I'm going to play it right away as knight to b4. This is not the type of move a player of this rating would make, but this is, I think, one of the strongest moves according to the engine. And there's a book that came out several years ago by Grandmaster Larry Kaufman called the Kaufman Repertoire. He wrote a couple of books, one a repertoire for white and one a repertoire for black. And he mentioned this move as, I think, a novelty at the time, where black delays recapturing the knight, but rather pressures a bishop. And if this knight moves, there's going to be pawn e4. So I'm putting my opponent into the tank early on. White does have maybe a few options there. Moves a knight. I'll go ahead and fork now the bishop and this knight. And there's a very important idea that if white takes and then takes and then takes, white would be up a pawn, but then black has a move f5, which exploits the bishop. But we don't quite get that. Instead, bishop takes e4, so take back. And now I'm still down a pawn here, so I guess I have to figure out where my compensation is. And I'll admit that this is not a position I recall studying. But it looks like there's some options. I mean, queen e7 comes to mind. And queen e2 would walk into knight takes c2. I think the problem with queen e7 is white can simply castle. I can't take the knight because of rook e1. So the other move that comes to mind is bishop f5. I think is very natural, just exerting pressure against the knight. And if d3, then maybe I can take and take. And even though we trade queens, I take away white's castling rights. Now, I will have to be careful simplifying too much, given that I'm down a pawn. But we'll see what white wants to do here. I mean, d3 is most natural. Maybe castling was possible, but okay, let's see what's happening here. So if I take the knight, white takes back, we trade queens. I could castle queenside with check, and then develop. I mean, the white king is going to be tied down to defending the c pawn. There will be pressure against the f pawn, and then rook e8 will be coming quite quickly. I know there's a lot of arrows here. Apologies for the mess on the board. But I think this is one of my best lines. Because, I mean, what else do I do? Like, bishop e7 seems too slow. And there's really no other way to make threats. So, yeah, we'll trade. And even though we are trading, I'm essentially keeping the initiative. Maybe white has queen e2, but I don't think that works because then I can give away the knight and then win the d pawn. And yeah, I'm going to trade queens. And then castle. So we basically went from the opening, now already approaching an endgame. I mean, this is still probably a queenless middle game. I'll play bishop c5. Very natural move, attacking the undefended f-pawn. Now it's a question, can white keep everything defended? Rook f1 seems like the natural move to defend, but instead king c1 is played, which makes a lot of sense, unpinning the bishop. I can't actually take on f2. So I'm debating here between moving the knight back or starting with this. I like the idea of starting with rook he8. Should note that if white plays c3, I have knight d3 check. And maybe we'll see a3. Or bishop takes b4, okay. So we're trading some more. I'm still attacking this pawn. c3 counterattacks a bishop. So now I'll move back. Now both pawns are hanging. And I think if I can win back a pawn, black should be for choice, just because I have the more developed pieces. I mean, white basically has to choose which pawn to defend. There's rook f1 or rook e1, or maybe king c2, and then give me the choice which pawn to take. Rook f1 is played, so I think the choice is pretty clear here. Take on e4. And the two center files are wide open. And this is feeling good. Like white has passive rooks. I have the more active rooks. Very much ready to play rook e2 and start pressuring white's second rank. It's really not easy for white to defend. And rook e1 would try and neutralize, but then I would eventually win the f-pawn. With knight d2, I think I'm still happy to go in rook e2. Attacking the knight, attacking the pawn. Now, there is knight b3 to attack the bishop, but then I can take bishop takes f2. Yeah, this is looking really, really nice. I mean, I will say that white didn't make any, like, too many obvious mistakes. Like they won a pawn early, they tried to simplify, but I think my opponent was just a little bit too slow to develop. And I don't think they recognized the danger too soon. Or soon enough, I should say. Yeah, I'm going to take the pawn with the bishop. And now the king is pretty much stuck. Like, I can't move up to allow the rook to come in, which means the rook is going to be stuck for a long time to come. And in the meantime, I'm threatening to play bishop e3 and then hopefully clean up the king side. Okay, a3 does have the plan of walking the king to a2. So mainly calculating bishop e3, king b1. If I take here, I would lose the f-pawn. So maybe I'll start with bishop e3 and then play f6. Save the f-pawn, keep the g-pawn attacked. That looks pretty good. Yeah, there's no need to give white counterplay with this rook. I am giving white time to get the king to a2. But if I can win g2, then everything should be under control. And maybe the best try is king a2, rook takes g2, and then rook a to e1, which maybe we'll see play out. I'm happy to take the pawn, though. Okay, white's saving the h-pawn. Now, my dream would be to get both rooks on the second rank. I can't do that right away because knight covers d2. And maybe I can start with this move, bishop f4. Simply attacking the pawn. Also, maybe creating the possibility of rook e8 to e2. Another idea would be to play a5, deflect the knight, and then eventually get in rook d2. It might be worth sacking a pawn. Like a5, knight takes a5, rook d2. Another move is bishop e5, like very simply threatening to take the pawn. Yeah, I might as well centralize the bishop. Attacking c3, because the b2 pawn is pinned to the king. And life is very good here. I'm up 2 pawns, very solid position, more active pieces. White goes for the knight jump. I mean, now I can either take or start with rook d2. And both moves look really attractive. I think I'll start with rook d2. Because I'm threatening mate in 1. If knight a4, seemingly defending both pawns, I can take on c3. And then if the knight takes back, I checkmate. And if the rook defends b1, I can again take on c3. I mean, this is a nice example of like one of the main strategies you should go for towards the endgame is, especially if you can get both rooks on your opponent's second rank, it can lead to very, very good things. And I'll try and create a mating net here. I mean, b5 comes to mind, but then the king can run. So I like the idea of starting with rook gd2, cutting off the king now on the b and d files. I'm threatening checkmate in 1. There's not too many ways for white to stop it. I mean, maybe one of these knight moves, maybe a4. Or maybe just allow it. Okay. Well, a nice pawn mate to finish the game there. I think that was a very instructive game. Kind of shows nice transition from the opening pretty much straight to the end game. And this is a very classic opening, the center fork trick. It's a position I've had maybe in some of the earlier episodes of the speedrun. And there are a few tries for white. I do get a lot of questions. What if white takes the pawn on f7, which is not that scary for black. Black can take back, and after takes d5, even though black has lost castling rights, the center is really, really strong, and white's just on the back foot here. Knight g5, king g8, and yeah, engine already gives a pretty clear plus for black. So going back, bishop to d3 is probably one of the best moves. And yeah, knight b4, it's a special kind of opening preparation type move that not too many players know about. Like even very strong players would probably go for taking in this position, which is also a fine move. But after knight b4, it definitely put the pressure on white, and what we saw in the game, e4. I do want to just point out this line. If the knight were to take first, and then takes, f5 is a really nice idea to kind of trap the bishop. I mean, I'm not winning the bishop for free. There is bishop d3, but then black's doing really well after knight takes g3 and queen takes g3. 2 bishops and better structure. Very pleasant position for black. So going back, yeah, we went into this line where the engine says it's equal, but I think it was just more fun to play for black. After d3, we traded, And yeah, we see that like even if you are down a pawn, sometimes having more active pieces can make up for it. Let's just see where my opponent went wrong here, because the engine still says it's equal. After c3, bishop c5. Okay, it says rook f1 was a mistake. The best move apparently was e5, saving the e-pawn, giving the f-pawn, and after king c2, yeah, it would have been a fight. It's still a very playable position. For both sides, equal material, knight versus bishop. This pawn could be a weakness, but it does control space as well. So yeah, things just went downhill for white after rook f1, and yeah, especially when my rook came to e2, it's very hard to recover here. But yeah, nice game to start the episode. Let's keep it going. Playing k17 Swain. Play pawn e4. And I mean, do I play a 4 knights myself? Okay, let's start with the 3 knights. Maybe we'll have another 4 knights. I mean, knight f6 is certainly the most common move here. And bishop to b4 also may be playable. But my opponent's playing a gambit, which I don't know if I've seen before. And this is similar to the Schliemann, what you see in the Spanish, or the Rousseau gambit. Chess.com is calling this the 3 knights Winawer. It's cut off, but maybe I can show it here. The Winawer defense. Yeah, not an opening I've heard of before. And there is a Winawer French, which is very different. So, yeah, what to do here? I mean, if I take the pawn, there's not e4 because my knight's covering e4. So, in taking is a possibility. I mean, there could be d5 and then black still gets the center. Another thought is playing d4 myself, just trying to bust open the position. I mean, if d4 and then takes, could get a bit messy. But maybe messy is good. Like black's committed the f-pawn. I'm ahead in development. d4 takes and then takes and then takes and then takes. I think white will be happy there. I'm gonna go for this. I mean, there's a lot of pawn tension now. But usually, like with the central pawn tension, it will favor the side who's more developed, which is white for the time being. I do have an extra knight developed. After the trade, I would like to think that this pawn is weaker than this pawn. This pawn is actually like pretty easy to defend. And meanwhile, this pawn is not as easy to defend. Knight f6 is off limits. But bishop e4 is resourceful, pinning my knight, preventing knight takes e4. And queen d4 comes to mind, simply attacking the bishop and the pawn. And I don't think I would mind, like if takes, I take back, willingly doubling my c-pawns, but it seems like I'm very likely to win the e-pawn. And there's other options like bishop c4. Queen h5 also comes to mind. And after g6, the queen would have to move again. And I can't cannibalize my own pawn with queen takes e5. If that were possible, that would be nice, but e5 square is off limits for my queen. So I'm going to go for queen d4. Yeah, just attacking the bishop, attacking the pawn. And if black trades, then I'll have the bishop pair. More importantly, I'll have the dark square bishop, which could potentially come to a3 in some lines. Black instead defends the bishop. Now I can take on e4. And it seems like a very comfortable position now. I'm up a pawn, have good center, and very fluid development too with the bishops. Bishop c4 looks nice, preventing black from castling. Maybe I could have also considered bishop d3, which would allow black to castle, but castle into queen takes h7. I should note, I'm not scared of this move because of en passant. If I didn't have en passant, then this could potentially be scary. So black's playing c6. Maybe preparing b5. Although, if black wants to play b5, I might be able to take it, because a pawn would then be pinned to the rook. So I think here I'm mainly deciding between castling or developing the bishop. In bishop g5, I might as well start with this move. Simply pinning the knight. I'm still not scared of d5. Okay, we do see b5. Now, do I actually want to take? I mean, there's takes, takes, takes. That should be good. But then black would be able to castle. I'm honestly more inclined to keep my bishop. I feel like the bishop is a more useful piece than the rook in this position. And with bishop d3, I still prevent black from castling. That's what I noted earlier. So yeah, I'm going to keep the bishop. It's another case where I'm prioritizing like my good pieces over winning material. I'm sure bishop b5 was fine, but I'd rather kind of just keep the pressure in the position. I should also note I didn't play bishop b3 because, although maybe I could have played bishop b3, a4 there'd be queen takes b4. And maybe bishop b3 there'd be take and then a4, and I didn't want my bishops to get stuck. Now black's in a position where it's kind of hard to develop. I mean, bishop b7, maybe the best plan is to play bishop b7, move the queen, and prepare c5. That might be hard to achieve, though. So pawn g6. Maybe preparing castling. I'm looking for moves here which prevent black from castling, but maybe I should just welcome the possibility of flat castling, because then I can get some attack on the king side. I mean, queen h4 comes to mind. Just creating the battery against the knight. a3 is an option. h4 also an option. Of course, castling as well. I'm going to play h4. This is just a very typical idea whenever the pawn commits to g6 for black and the rook is still on h1. I think it's more valuable for me to leave the rook on h1, even though castling would have been fine to get the rook towards the center. I think I can do a lot of damage, especially if I get in this this pawn break with h5. And if black castles, then there's going to be massive pressure with the pawn, queen bishop battery, the rook, other bishop. And even if black doesn't castle, I think h5 is a pretty nice threat in the position. Okay, so black does castle. And yeah, I'm going to play h5. I'll be very impressed if black can survive like 5 more moves here, because I have just so many more attackers than black has defenders. But I mean, rook f5, it's an interesting try, trying to diffuse my battery, attack my bishop. Definitely considering taking. I don't think it's worth giving away this bishop. So bishop f6 comes to mind. f4 also comes to mind. Simply defending and reinforcing everything. It's somewhat of a choice here. I think I'm leaning more towards bishop f6. Yeah, because now this pawn bishop construction, the bishop defends the pawn defends the bishop. And there's ideas later of taking, and then if the pawn takes back, my rook can infiltrate with rook h8. I was even imagining some lines where, let's say d5, maybe I can still take and then sack my queen. And that's probably not necessary, but yeah, I think there's still going to be a lot of pressure against the h-file. So with queen f8, yeah, I think I'm happy just to take. Again, if the pawn takes, I get in with the rook. If the knight takes, I win the rook on f5. And I don't mind if rook takes f6. I could take back, or I could throw in the check first. I might as well throw in the check first. What we call the in-between move, or the Zwischenzug. Before recapturing, I just make a simple threat. And now I'll take the rook. And it's really, really close to, I mean, it seems like it's close to mating. But black is using my pawn as a shield. Like, again, I want to cannibalize my own pawn and play queen takes h7 checkmate, but that's not legal. And meanwhile, black is attacking my knight on c3 a couple times. So I could play maybe queen g4, but that doesn't even threaten queen g8. Maybe I'll just castle first. Get my rook in, or get my queenside rook into play. I don't mind if takes and takes and takes. The queen is not going to do so much damage on its own. And that would abandon the knight as well. But we might see this play out. Okay, d5 first. A logical move. I guess I should be impressed. My opponent has survived at least 5 moves since I said that I would be impressed if my opponent survived 5 moves. And yeah, I'm not close to mating. I might just trade queens here, queen d4, and then go into an endgame where if queens come off the board, then hopefully my rook can come into play. And my pawn is still very well supported on h7. Okay, so I could play f3. I think I'll just start with rook e1. The knight is somewhat restricted by my bishop and black's own pawns. It's actually not easy to defend the knight here. Because knight f5 walks into f3. I would chase away the bishop from defending the knight. If knight c8, that cuts off the back rank, I would have rook e8 with some eventual checkmate. And if rook g6 defending the knight, I have bishop, or rook e8 defending the knight, I would have bishop g6. Maybe rook a7 was the best try there. Okay, but now I can play f3. F3 actually just trapped the bishop as well. So I'll take the bishop. Black will probably take on d4. Now, I'd really just like to go for checkmate. I think I'll start with rook g1. My plan is going to be bishop g6, bishop f7, and then rook g8. And this rook is tied down to defending against rook g8. Yeah, let's go for this. And maybe the knight will try and stop me from my devious plans. And if black plays rook f8 here, trying to prevent bishop f7, I would still play bishop f7 because rook g8 would be on tap. Oh, this is a threat. Very clever. Okay, I'll play king d2. If knight takes bishop, I'll take back. My pawn will still be supported. Yeah, my opponent is living up to the saying, never resign when you have a knight. Now, yeah, now I can play bishop f7. Avoided all the knight forks. I'm threatening mate in 2. Yeah, I don't see how black is stopping it. If black could somehow remove all the pieces from the board, it would be stalemate, but there's a lot of legal moves there. Okay, I'll take this knight. I just have to remove all the pawns and the rook. And this is checkmate. Okay. Kind of a cool mating pattern that you don't see every day. The rook defends a pawn, defends a rook, checkmates a king. One funny thing came to mind that, let's say my opponent plays c5. I can play rook g8, take, and then take back. And it's a rare case where you see a double check under promotion to rook, and both rooks attacking the king. Doesn't happen too often, but it's kind of hoping for this finish. But anyway, yeah, another nice kind of instructive game. Hopefully some lessons to take away from this game. I think my opponent tried to just play a really offbeat opening to try and trick me up, but I think d4 was a nice, very principled approach just to open the center and make use of white's lead in development. And yeah, black just kind of got into trouble early. Now in this position, yeah, the top engine move is bishop takes b5, which would have been fine to play, but I was content with bishop d3, and this was a nice attacking idea. Now, I do want to give my opponent kudos for defending for so long, because I really thought I was going to be mating very soon here, but they resisted, and yeah, we see kind of this this level of resistance around this rating level. Players don't go down so easily, and yeah, it took some patience to win in the endgame. But nice game overall. I think I'll keep it going. We'll do one more. Next opponent, playing Luke Ko. This time we have a Queen's Pawn opening, a London opening. So I'm going to stick with what I like to recommend against a London, which is essentially a reverse Queen's Gambit. Knight c6. And I mean, the main point is to put the queen on b6 and attack one of the only things which is not defended in white's position. Queen c2 is a fine move. And I do want to note here that there's sometimes a trick that black can play, which is bishop f5, attempting to deflect the white queen away from defending the b2 pawn. Bishop f5 doesn't work in this position because white has an in-between move, pawn takes pawn, a nice counterattacking move. There is a grandmaster, Min Lei, who likes to play this move in a lot of blitz and bullet chess online. Shout out to Min Lei, also YouTuber and streamer as well. So against queen c2, there are a few options for black. I'm going to play the most logical move, as far as I know, which is g6. It's not a move that you see every day in the structure. Like usually this bishop will develop towards the center. But in this case, I was preparing bishop f5. And even with bishop d3, which prevents bishop f5, I can play c4. I should also take a drink of water. Running out of voice. Sometimes this happens when I talk too much. But now I can happily play bishop f5, attacking the queen. Queen is tied down to defending the pawn. And yeah, this is looking really nice now. White's not quite getting the typical London setup because the bishop is not on d3, and I have some nice grip on the queen side. But the game will continue from here. And I think the normal move would be bishop to g7. But there's another move that I'm drawn towards here. And it's actually a very typical move to play against the London is knight h5. simply trying to trade knight for bishop. And if I play knight h5, the bishop can run, but I don't think it can hide. So I'm going to play knight h5. And usually it's nice if you can make this trade early on and then keep the bishop pair in the long run for later in the game. I did draw the arrow for f6 earlier, but I think h6 is maybe a bit more pleasant. Just ensuring that if I play bishop g7, my bishop's not completely blocked. And now if I play g5, I do have to watch out for my knight undefended on h5. But I don't think white can exploit me. Like if knight takes, I just take back and I defend my knight. And now I can take the bishop. I do open the h-file for white. But after bishop g7, yeah, there's no tactics with knight takes g5. My rook's defended. And we're going into a slightly different phase of the game. Transitioning from opening to middle game. Now, neither of us have castled. And I'm not sure if I actually want to castle kingside so soon. Just because white does have the h-file. So I'll take a moment here to choose between whatever options I have. And castling is definitely a candidate move. There's another move that comes to mind, which is far more confrontational, is pawn e5. The idea would be to try and open the position. After takes, I take with knight, maybe try and get into the d3 square. I mean, the one thing I don't like about e5 is after takes, white has a very good d4 square for the knight. So I probably don't want to commit to that right away. I'm pretty limited as far as my other options go. Should also note here that maybe white wants to, at some point, play e4 and try and destabilize my pawns. So a move like bishop g6 comes to mind, just to ensuring that e4 doesn't attack my bishop. There's also a question, what does white want to do here? I'm actually realizing white maybe wants to play b3. Target my pawn, and then if white can trade, it's a little bit easier for white to play. So that's making me think that perhaps it makes sense to allow for b5, which means my queen should get out of the way of my b pawn. Queen a5 or even queen d8. Actually leaning towards queen d8, because then if b3, b5, and if a4 I can safely play a6, my queen would defend the rook. Yeah, I'm going to play queen d8. And it looks like kind of a ugly move, putting my queen back on the starting square. But I think it's justified. Like my queen served its purpose, pressuring b2. It caused white to kind of have a passive position. And now it's time to try and grab space and reinforce my pawns on the queen side. White castles, okay. Now I feel more safe castling kingside. But I also feel motivated to try and attack on the king side. Like if I can somehow play h5, h4. I think I'll start with e6 here. Just a solidifying move. Creating connect 4. Okay, now, yeah, I think b5 is called for. I was also going to say that e6 would over-defend g5, maybe allow for h5, h4. But the focus is shifting to the queen side. And this is basically what I was calculating earlier when I played queen d8, is that my queen defends the rook here. White's trying to maybe support takes and then rook a1. I'm going to castle. I feel like my rook should come into play. And white's probably going to take over the a-file temporarily. I will say that white's position, like even though maybe it's a little bit passive, it's still pretty solid. White doesn't really have any obvious weaknesses here. It's going to take a lot of work to crack the setup. Bishop d3, I think, is a very fine move. The drawback of bishop, or what did I say? Bishop d1 is a very fine move. The drawback of this move is I have bishop d3. And I mean, that would force a rook to move. I might as well start with this. I mean, white wants to play bishop c2. Let's start by taking the rook on a1. I'm thinking queen b6, just returning. Not so simple, though. And there's g4. Actually, maybe g4 makes some sense, but g4 knight h2. I really have to watch my time as well. Okay, I'll play queen b6. Really just trying to focus on the queen side. Now, yeah, now rook a8. And bishop c2, I'll probably have to trade. As much as I don't want to trade. Yeah, white's neutralized a bit. And there is rook a3 here. Let's start with rook a3. Yeah, my opponent's done a very good job of like playing solidly and quickly. I'm down over 4 minutes on the clock, but I'm trying to keep the pressure. Trying to target these pawns. And a few moves ago, I said white doesn't really have any weaknesses, but I think it's going to be these pawns that are going to be the main targets, especially the c3 pawn. Let's take keeping the pawn chain intact. Now queen a5. I now have two attackers against c3. Should note that my knight controls b8. So there's no rook b8. And white maybe is best off just holding on to the pawn. I'm thinking I'll play rook a2. We see rook c1, rook a2. Just trying to be as active as possible. Queen d1. So abandoning the pawn. I might as well take. e4. Okay, white's trying to create chaos in the position. d4 is hanging. I have to be careful though. The center opening up. I think I'll start with rook d3. Just liking the square for the rook. Because there's threats of either c3 or g4. I could take with the pawn or the queen. I actually like taking with queen more. Just nice central square. And now there's 4 attackers against a d4 pawn, only 1 defender. I mean, c3 is still an idea. My king is decently safe here. Like, even though I've expanded on the king side, I do have the h7 square in most cases. And yeah, here, I mean, I could take on d4. Although maybe I can start with g4. Trying to remove this knight from defending this knight. Queen a8 is one check, but then king h7. Oh, rook b5. Didn't quite see that coming. I have probably queen d7. Queen d7 looks okay. And there are these moves. I think I'll be happy to try and trade and simplify given the time situation. Oh, queen takes d3. Completely missed that. That's a bad blunder. I think I can take on d4 though. Oh, this is getting really messy. The idea is if queen takes rook, I play this move. I win the queen. If rook b8, I can't play king h7 because this comes with check, but I can play bishop f8. Okay, I'm going to win the queen. That got really messy there. It's possible white was... I mean, it still takes work, too. Wow. Okay, let's play f6. Trying to make sure the knight can't do too much damage. I'm going to go after this pawn. Maybe even this pawn. That pawn is pinned to the king. I have 1 minute and 11 seconds to win this. Defending the bishop. Yeah, I'm not really threatening to take because my queen is... it needs to keep defending the bishop. Okay, we'll move my king in. Okay, this is a check. The king is getting a little bit airy. Probably should have stayed close to its pawns because now, yeah, this is actually forced mate, almost? Maybe not quite. Yeah, let's start with this. And there's knight d2. If king e1, it will be forced mate. Okay. This is a relief. Like, I think I was close to losing at some point there. A big mess before I won the queen. Yeah, if knight d2, I take with the bishop. I'll just show the mate. It's takes, and then here, 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 and then checkmate. Oh, accept. Okay, maybe I would have mouse slipped in an alternate universe. I did not actually intend to mouse slip there, but at queen takes f2, I would hopefully have enough time to play. So let's go back. A lot to unpack in this game. I think the opening was nice. Like I got a nice grip on the position, but my opponent played a very solid London and did not crack easily. Queen d8. Queen d8 was one of the few moves I saw a clear purpose behind. Engine is saying rook c8 for some reason, which I don't fully understand. Engine also says castling. Seems like there are a handful of options for black. But going forward, yeah, it was a big battle on the queen side. And overall, it seemed like I had good control, even after the bishop trade. But e4, I think, was a very good practical try. Like, I was low on time, and my opponent was just trying to create chaos in the position. And they did a good job of keeping the initiative. I played g4, rook b5 was a great counterattack. And then I completely missed that my c-pawn was hanging after queen d7. But already it's not so simple, because my queen doesn't have a safe square to move to keep c4 defended. And amazingly, the top engine move is to not move my queen. It's to play the move rook a3, counterattacking white's queen. That's really hard to find, especially with a time situation. An idea would be if queen takes rook, I can take white's rook. We simplify. But after queen d7 and queen takes d4 and knight takes d4, wow, white was like close to winning here and has a huge advantage. My opponent played the best move, rook b8. And after bishop to f8, white missed a really, really powerful move. I mean, they took the rook, which blunders a queen, but this is white to move. There's knight e5. And it doesn't matter that this knight is hanging because white's attacking my queen and my rook. I think I could have easily lost this position. Now it's still a mess because I have the move queen d6, and like everything is hanging here. Both of white's knights are hanging, the rook is hanging, but my rook on d3 is also hanging. And the best line is knight takes d3, queen takes b8, queen takes d4. I would have been down a piece after the dust settles. Also down on time. So yeah, I'm very fortunate my opponent let me off the hook and didn't find knight e5. Sometimes this is why it's very important to slow down. Like even when your opponent's low on time, you should really take your own time to navigate through the chaos. So it's a relief. I'm keeping the clean winning streak. I think I'll end it there. Thanks everyone for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the games in this episode. As always, if you like the content, do subscribe. It does help the channel. And I'll see you guys soon.